What if the person who seems the most independent in your life is actually the one who struggles the most with emotional closeness, but has simply learned how to hide it so well that no one ever notices? Welcome to Decode His Mind, where we break down the hidden psychology behind human behavior and uncover what people rarely say out loud. In today's video, we're exploring the subtle traits of avoidant individuals who have few or no friends, and understanding the emotional patterns, habits, and past experiences that shape the way they connect or distance themselves from others. Emotional independence in avoidant individuals is not just a personality preference. It is often a learned survival strategy. These people have usually experienced situations where depending on others led to disappointment, rejection, or emotional inconsistency. So over time, they start building a strong internal rule: I will rely only on myself. At first, this may look like confidence or maturity, but underneath it is often self-protection. They begin to feel safer when they are in control of their own emotions, decisions, and routines, because relying on others feels unpredictable. Even when support is available, they may hesitate to accept it, not because they don't need it, but because accepting it creates vulnerability. This independence becomes deeply ingrained, shaping how they handle friendships, relationships, and even small emotional moments. They may avoid sharing problems, preferring to deal with everything alone, and over time this reinforces emotional distance from others. What makes it complex is that they often don't recognize it as avoidance. Instead, they see it as strength or self-sufficiency, even though it sometimes isolates them from meaningful emotional connection and support that could actually make life easier and less internally heavy. Social fatigue in avoidant individuals goes beyond simple introversion or shyness. It is a deeper emotional and cognitive exhaustion that builds up during interaction. For them, socializing is not naturally energizing but mentally demanding. Every conversation requires careful monitoring of tone, facial expressions, timing, and emotional responses, which creates constant internal pressure. Even casual talks can feel like performance, where they are quietly trying to avoid saying something wrong or being misunderstood. Over time, this effort drains their mental energy faster than it does for others. As a result, they start preferring isolation, not always because they dislike people, but because solitude feels emotionally quiet and predictable. In social settings, they may appear reserved or distant because their mind is already processing too much internally. After interactions, they often feel the need to withdraw completely to recover, which others may misinterpret as disinterest or coldness. This cycle reinforces their avoidance, as they begin to associate people with exhaustion rather than comfort. The more fatigued they feel socially, the more they limit interaction, which gradually reduces their social circle and strengthens their comfort with being alone over time, and reinforces emotional distance from others even further in daily life. Struggling to open up emotionally for avoidant individuals is often rooted in a deep fear of vulnerability rather than a lack of emotion. They usually feel things just as strongly as anyone else, but expressing those feelings creates discomfort because it exposes them to judgment, rejection, or misunderstanding. Over time, they learn to keep their inner world private, sharing only surface-level thoughts while protecting the deeper, more sensitive parts of themselves. Even in close relationships, they may carefully filter what they say, choosing words that feel safe instead of fully honest. This habit is not always conscious. It becomes automatic, shaped by past experiences where openness may have led to emotional pain or being dismissed. As a result, they often struggle to articulate what they truly feel in the moment, even when they want to be understood. They may also delay conversations about important emotions, hoping the feeling will pass rather than confronting it directly. This creates a gap between what they experience internally and what others perceive externally. To outsiders, they may seem distant or unreadable, but internally they are often processing a lot, just without the language or comfort to express it outwardly in a clear, consistent way. Valuing solitude more than group activities in avoidant individuals is not simply a preference for being alone, but often a conditioned sense of emotional safety. In solitude, there are no expectations to perform socially, no pressure to respond instantly, and no risk of being judged or misunderstood. This makes alone time feel controlled, predictable, and mentally quiet. Group settings, on the other hand, can feel overwhelming because they involve multiple emotional signals happening at once, such as conversations, body language, and social dynamics that require constant adjustment. Instead of feeling connected, they may feel mentally crowded in such environments. Over time, solitude becomes their default space for recovery and self-regulation. They may use it to think, recharge, and regain emotional balance after even small social interactions. What appears to others as isolation is often experienced internally as relief. However, this preference can slowly reinforce distance from others as the comfort of being alone starts replacing the motivation to engage socially. They may still desire connection at a deeper level, but the ease and safety of solitude often outweigh the effort and unpredictability of group involvement, shaping their long-term social patterns and emotional habits without them fully realizing it. Avoidant individuals often struggle with asking for help even when they genuinely need it, because it conflicts with their internal belief of self-reliance. For them, needing support can feel like exposing a weakness or losing control over their situation. Over time, they develop the habit of handling problems privately, believing that depending on others may lead to disappointment, burdening someone, or emotional vulnerability. Even in situations where help is easily available, they may hesitate, overthink, or try to solve everything alone first. This behavior is not necessarily pride, but a protective mechanism shaped by past experiences where support may have been unreliable or emotionally unsafe. As a result, they often internalize stress instead of sharing it, which increases emotional pressure over time. Others may assume they are capable or unaffected because they rarely express struggle outwardly. However, inside they may be dealing with more than they show. This pattern also reinforces isolation, as not asking for help reduces opportunities for emotional connection and trust building. Gradually, they become accustomed to managing everything on their own, even when collaboration or support would make things easier, faster, and less mentally exhausting in everyday life situations and emotional challenges they silently face. Overthinking social situations and possible rejection is a very common inner pattern in avoidant individuals, even if they appear calm on the outside. Before, during, and after interactions, their mind often runs multiple scenarios about how others might perceive them. A simple message, tone of voice, or facial expression can be replayed repeatedly in their thoughts as they try to interpret hidden meanings or possible negative judgments. This constant mental analysis is not random, it is rooted in a deep sensitivity to rejection and embarrassment. They often anticipate worst-case outcomes in advance, such as being misunderstood, judged, or emotionally exposed. Because of this, even basic social decisions like replying to a message or initiating a conversation can feel heavier than they should. After interactions, they may continue analyzing what they said, wondering if it sounded strange or inappropriate. This cycle creates mental fatigue and increases hesitation in future interactions. Over time, this habit reinforces avoidance, because avoiding social situations feels easier than dealing with the stress of overthinking. Internally, they are not disconnected from social life. Instead, their mind is constantly active, trying to protect them from potential emotional discomfort and rejection in advance and maintain control over uncertainty. On the outside, avoidant individuals often appear calm, composed, and emotionally steady, but internally there is usually a strong sense of distance from others. This calmness is not always emotional peace. It is often a controlled way of managing feelings by not expressing them openly. They learn to regulate emotions internally rather than sharing them, which creates an impression that nothing affects them deeply. However, inside they may still feel loneliness, stress, or emotional complexity that they rarely communicate. This disconnect between outer behavior and inner experience happens because they are used to keeping their emotional world private. Over time, they become skilled at masking feelings, especially in social situations, so others rarely notice what they are going through. This can make them seem self-sufficient or unbothered, but in reality they may be processing a lot internally. The emotional distance they create helps them avoid vulnerability, but it also limits deeper connection with people around them. Even in relationships, they might struggle to fully let others see their emotional side, leading to misunderstandings where others assume they are fine when they are actually dealing with unspoken emotional weight and internal complexity, most of the time quietly. Slow trust in avoidant individuals develops because trust for them is not based on words or short experiences but on long-term emotional consistency. They do not easily believe what people say. Instead, they observe how someone behaves over time in different situations. This careful approach comes from a fear of getting emotionally attached too quickly and then experiencing disappointment or betrayal. Even when someone shows kindness or reliability, they may still hold back emotionally, waiting to see if that behavior remains stable. This makes their trust-building process very gradual and cautious. They often test situations indirectly by keeping emotional distance to see how others respond, rather than openly expressing doubt. Because of this, relationships with them can feel slow to develop at first, as they need repeated proof that a person is safe and consistent. Even after trust is formed, it is usually fragile and can be affected by small signs of inconsistency or emotional unpredictability. Internally, they want connection, but their protective mindset makes them careful about who they let in. This cautious trust pattern often protects them from emotional harm, but it also delays deep intimacy and creates a barrier that only time, patience, and consistency can slowly reduce. Keeping conversations surface level is a common pattern in avoidant individuals because deeper communication feels emotionally risky and exposing. They often prefer talking about neutral, safe topics such as daily routines, general opinions, or light experiences instead of sharing personal feelings or inner thoughts. This helps them stay in control of the interaction without revealing too much of their emotional world. Even when they are in a close relationship or familiar environment, they may unconsciously steer conversations away from topics that require vulnerability, such as fears, needs, or emotional struggles. This is not because they lack depth, but because depth feels like opening a door to possible judgment, misunderstanding, or emotional dependency. By staying at a surface level, they can maintain distance while still participating socially. Over time, this becomes a habit, making it harder for others to truly understand them on a deeper emotional level. People around them may feel that something is missing in the connection, even if conversations are pleasant. Internally, they might want deeper bonds, but the safety of light conversation feels more manageable. This creates a cycle where emotional intimacy remains limited, even when opportunities for closeness are present and available in everyday interactions consistently. Past experiences play a major role in shaping avoidant behavior, especially when it comes to emotional closeness and friendships. Many avoidant individuals have gone through situations where their emotional needs were ignored, misunderstood, or even criticized. These experiences teach them, often unconsciously, that depending on others can lead to disappointment or emotional pain. As a result, they begin to withdraw emotionally and rely more on themselves for stability. It is not always one big traumatic event, but sometimes a series of small moments where they felt unseen, unheard, or emotionally unsafe. Over time, these repeated experiences build a protective mindset that encourages distance rather than closeness. They start believing that staying independent is safer than opening up. This emotional conditioning doesn't disappear easily. It influences how they respond in new relationships, even when the present situation is safe. They may still carry hesitation, doubt, or emotional caution without fully realizing why. In many cases, they are not actively choosing to be distant. Instead, they are reacting from old emotional memories stored in their behavior patterns. This is why their withdrawal often feels automatic, as if their mind has already learned to avoid emotional risk before it even appears again in current interactions. Not expressing neediness or emotional dependence is a strong trait in avoidant individuals, and it is usually tied to their deep discomfort with vulnerability. For them, showing need can feel like exposing a part of themselves that might be judged, rejected, or used against them emotionally. Because of this, they often learn to hide or suppress any sign of dependency, even when they genuinely need support, comfort, or reassurance. Instead of reaching out, they may try to handle emotional struggles privately and convince themselves that they are fine. This creates an internal gap between what they feel and what they show. They may care deeply about others, but they rarely express attachment in an obvious or verbal way. Even in close relationships, they might avoid phrases or behaviors that signal emotional reliance, such as asking for reassurance or admitting they miss someone. This is often mistaken as emotional detachment, but internally they still experience attachment. They just do not express it openly. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic, where independence is prioritized over emotional expression. While it protects them from feeling exposed, it also limits emotional closeness, making it harder for others to understand their true emotional needs and inner experiences fully. Convincing themselves that they don't need anyone is one of the strongest psychological defenses in avoidant individuals. It usually develops as a way to reduce emotional risk and protect themselves from potential disappointment or rejection. Instead of directly confronting feelings of loneliness, attachment, or emotional need, they reshape their internal narrative to feel self-sufficient. Over time, they start repeating thoughts like, "I am better alone," or "I don't depend on people," even when deeper emotional needs still exist beneath the surface. This belief helps them feel in control and reduces anxiety about forming close relationships because dependence is associated with vulnerability. However, this mindset is often more of a coping mechanism than an accurate reflection of their emotional reality. In many cases, they still experience attachment, care, and the desire for connection, but they suppress or rationalize these feelings to maintain emotional distance. This internal contradiction can create subtle tension, where they appear independent but occasionally feel isolated or disconnected without fully acknowledging it. The longer this belief is reinforced, the more it shapes their behavior, making them avoid situations that could lead to closeness, even when meaningful connection might actually improve their emotional stability and sense of belonging overall. In conclusion, avoidant individuals with few or no friends are not defined by a lack of emotion, but by the way they protect their emotional world. Their independence, silence, and distance are often built from past experiences that taught them to rely on themselves instead of others. What looks like calmness is often emotional control, and what seems like disinterest is usually caution shaped by fear of rejection or disappointment. They overthink connection, avoid vulnerability, and slowly withdraw, not because they do not value relationships, but because closeness feels unpredictable and unsafe to them. Over time, these patterns create a life that feels safer but also more isolated. Understanding them requires looking beyond behavior and recognizing the emotional logic behind it. With patience, consistency, and emotional safety, these barriers can soften, allowing genuine connection to slowly rebuild trust and closeness that they once learned to avoid. If this breakdown helped you understand what's really going on beneath the surface, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss what most people never notice about human behavior. And in the comments, drop the word "understood" if this message made you see things a little more clearly.